Well, welcome everyone. Chris Hagerstrom here with Jack Schrader and Associates, and I'd like to welcome everyone to our very first JSA podcast. Just 42 days before this year's annual enrollment period. Pleased to be here with everybody. Hope you guys learned some information. We're going to have a conversation with our Chief Distribution Officer, Adam Wasmund, talking about this year's AEP and what we can expect from the market. So, Adam, as our first guest on the podcast, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and say a little bit about what you've been up to?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. So hello, everybody. Adam Wasmund. I've been with JSA since 2000. And in fact, I have been working in the Medicare space and Medicare Advantage Part D specifically now. This is going on. In fact, Chris and I both 20th AEP. So we've been through every single one of these. And boy, has this industry really changed throughout the years. And, looking at how this year's playing out, it's going to be another very interesting one that we all need to evolve and adapt to. But it's something that, myself, Chris Hagerstrom, the team at JSA, we're here to make sure that we're setting up all agents for success. Whether that be, one product that you're working through us with, whether you're brand new and maybe you don't even have anybody through us yet. It's something that we do feel that we're bringing the support, the tools, the resources to make sure that you're helpful and resourceful and able to be successful during these troubling times.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, 20th AEP with JSA, and it's been crazy. I remember 20 years ago getting on the phone and talking to agents and teaching them what private fee-for-service plans were, and
doing certification face to face.
doing certification face-to-face and convincing agents that they could sell an insurance product for zero premium and still make a commission. And man, has things gotten have things, I'm sure.
So yeah, and looking at this industry and kind of, I guess maybe kind of lay the landscape. This year, whether you're a veteran to this industry and you've gone through all 20, 10, 5, what have you, the industry dynamics have really changed. A lot of people are looking at the carrier aspect of things right now. Yes, that's kind of crazy just trying to wrap your head around what all these carriers are doing across the country. Distribution side of things. Go back 10 years, go back 12 years, it was a lot of individual standing firms and organizations out there, agencies, individual agents. And now with a lot of the acquisitions and the consolidation and the distribution, that's also brought some turmoil to this industry. One of the kind of interesting things, I'll call it, to be nice with it is, if you were in this industry last AEP, this coming up AEP is shaping up to be kind of the same thing. And what I mean by that is between these carriers doing SARs, service area reduction areas, where they're pulling their products out, regardless if they have a plan there or not, suppressing products, not allowing products to be sold through electronic platforms, to just making their product non-commissionable. It's something we're seeing the same kind of trends happen for this coming up AEP, and that's unfortunate. It causes a lot of service work on your end, on JSA's end, just to make sure we're conserving the consumers we have, but also trying to figure out a way to continuously grow our footprint and grow your membership. SARS this year is going to happen again.
Yep.
It's happening quite a bit with the national carriers. It's happening with some of the smaller carriers. It's something that unfortunately has become the new normal over the past few years. But it's something that if you have a game plan in place and you have the tools and resources in place, it can make that abrasion a lot easier to navigate and get through this AEP. Some of the large ones we've been seeing, and this is kind of the trend that's been going on in this industry, is we see a lot of these carriers, not all of them, but we see a lot of these carriers starting to pull back on their products. And some will look at that and say, well, why? Some will look at it and say, well, it's the loss of profits. They can't control the networks. It's the quality of care. It's really kind of all of it. You go back and this issue really started occurring back in 2020. And it started with COVID. COVID suppressed a lot of services, a lot of treatments that individuals should have probably had done, and held off on it. Whether it was their choice, they didn't want to go into a hospital and expose themselves, whether it was a condition or service wasn't quote unquote needed and could be pushed off. Well, what happens with that is you have medical loss ratios that go down. There wasn't a lot of services happening, so there weren't the claims. Well, in turn, even the cost continued to go up.
Hmm.
So throughout these years, you had almost 3 years there where, COVID had a big play in this. And what was happening is you had the federal government just doing their either lower reimbursements to these carriers or just on average. Well, the problem that comes into play, especially last year, is where we saw the brunt of it. Is the government comes out and increases the funding to these carriers, and it looks great and fine and dandy. And yeah, it hit the average year over year. But the problem being is there's still a 3-year makeup that was
Hmm.
never being satisfied. So now you have these plans that we're now seeing higher medical procedures and loss ratios where they have to start trying to control the cost to extent. And one of the largest funding issues that these carriers have is not necessarily on just the services that are being done, but when star ratings are affected.
Hmm.
Star ratings, there's so many different parameters that the federal government looks at to determine what those star ratings are. If a carrier loses even a half a star or a full star, it financially really hurts these carriers. And at that point, what you're trying to do as a carrier is figure out how do I get that star rating back up? How do I bring these cost ratios back in check? And more importantly, how am I making sure that the consumer is getting truly quality of care? And where they're looking at doing that, and we're seeing this in the writing with how these carriers are coming out, but we see them going into more of that managed care aspect of things so they truly can make sure that all the providers a consumer seeing has a full story, has a whole picture on that consumer to make sure that they're getting the treatment that they need correctly, efficiently, and in the most cost-effective manner. And that's one of the largest things on why we're seeing a lot of these SARs and carriers releasing new products, even though they may not be pulling out of an area fully, but releasing products that they proof will be in the pudding, and we'll see what happens in the next few years. But it's designed, or their thought process here is to really make sure that quality of care is coming in turn, have the consumer see a better experience, live a healthier life. And in turn, that's going to increase those star ratings, which in turn they'll reap the rewards in the future and be able to increase those benefits in years to come. The other thing we saw happen this past year, which I think the writing was on the wall for most of us, is when a carrier goes suppressing their products, which is just simply the product's still available, we're just not allowing electronic enrollment, versus fully non-commissionable, where they're just trying to stop the business from coming in. They're seeing too much business coming in. The unfortunate thing with that is when a carrier does that, it's for one of two reasons. One, they already can tell that the plan is not profitable and they can't withstand it. And it's not necessarily they have to reap the rewards and make millions of dollars off of it. There's a very, very small percentage of that pie that they even can keep for profits. But when a plan that they see is on trend to bleed bad and to the point where they're not able to withstand it, they have one of two choices: suppress the product, try slowing it down, or turn it non-commissionable. The non-commissionables are more concerning to me personally, just watching how this industry has gone, because that's a clear line of sight that the next coming up year is probably going to be a service area reduction. The suppression is not, it's concerning. It's not as concerning for me. In my eyes and my belief, I believe the reason they do that is to slow those enrollments down. It's more so hurting call centers and individuals that are doing 100% sales virtually, but it's still available for an agent to be able to write and offer in a face-to-face setting, right? And why a carrier does that is, again, slow down that business, make sure they're getting quality of business that's coming in, making sure that a consumer truly understands what they have, and making sure that they utilize the benefits. That's the other thing. A lot of people look at it saying these insurance companies don't want you to utilize the benefits. They want you to. In fact, they need a consumer to utilize the benefits, because that's another star rating. If they're not utilizing those benefits, it's going to hurt their overall star rating. It's going to hurt their overall quality of business that the carriers see, and in fact, the livelihood of the member themselves, that they're not catching a condition ahead of time, or treating a condition when they should be, and so forth through to that.
What do you think the impact from the elimination or the termination of the VBID program is going to have on benefits for this coming up year?
Yeah, so that's going to where a lot of these carriers are throwing in their money and finding I'll call it a solution, is bringing out and investing heavily into these special needs plans, whether they're chronic or whether they're dual. It's no longer the days of throw all these added on benefits for a consumer, and that's how you're enticing them to sell. They need to get back to what healthcare is for. Healthcare is for making sure your health is satisfied, making sure you're covered financially in case of a catastrophic condition. I'll always look at it and saying, when it comes to healthcare, it's the number one reason somebody can go bankrupt is they get hit with a catastrophic condition that they're not prepared for, they don't have the correct insurance for. We see a lot of these carriers, like I said, investing heavily into the SNP marketplace. In fact, we've seen some national carriers even pretty drastically, I wouldn't say fully or exclusively, but to the extent that they're really putting 75 to 90% of their strategy around that SNP marketplace, that in turn you can get into offering those added on benefits. They just have to get verified at that point in time. So we're seeing more and more carriers come out with those SNP products. I think it's something where we're seeing carriers finally realize that it's no longer this one size fits all. And I know we've been seeing that a lot over the past years, but I think it's really showing its face now, to the extent that, a consumer needs to really choose what they're looking for. Are they looking for the least expensive things with all the bells and whistles? Do we do that in cars? Do we do that in an airline that you're traveling on? And at some point, you have to remember what we're purchasing as a consumer, and B, what we're offering to a consumer, and that's truly healthcare. Is it for all the add-ons as utilities and groceries, and I mean, we had some carriers out there that did golf clubs and memberships and
And pet
all
and
this.
pet accessories and all
Yeah,
those crazy
and pet,
things.
pet accessories and pest control. And yes, does that help with quality of care? Absolutely, but it's only a certain population segment, I'll call it. And that's why I do think that it's probably the right decision to go about it. I just think they probably could have done it a little better way and slowly transition in. Because that even comes down to, and what it was really designed for is more the low income and individuals with specific health conditions. But even you take a diabetic, you have a diabetic, and if they can't get their home in the right standings, or if they don't have a refrigerator that can keep their medication, their insulin cooled enough, it's not efficient, and in turn that's gonna destroy your health even quicker and faster. And those are the situations where you need those extra things. The low income, helping out with the utilities, making sure that they have their heat if they're in a northern state come winter, making sure they have AC if they're down in a southern state and they're getting hit with these 112 degree heat temps. So it makes sense in the right facet, but it is now going to put a little bit more burden on both the consumer and on the agent, making sure that they're verifying and doing the chronic verification forms, and making sure that they're actually set up in the correct dual product and they have the right MC in the state, and so forth through. And that's all kind of changed since COVID. Also, we had a huge flux of individuals that qualified. Now they're going back into requalification. A lot of them are coming off of that. But the other extent with that is we have to keep in mind, statistically, individuals with low income usually have more health conditions. So even if they're right at that cusp where maybe they didn't qualify, the odds that they have a chronic condition, or what a chronic condition is classified as, is pretty high. It's not a guarantee, but it is pretty high that they have something there. And it's, in my opinion, it's our responsibility as being a national brokerage. It's an agent's responsibility, being that representative and that expert in the healthcare industry locally, that we know what options are available and we know how to get individuals through that process in a smooth facet, making sure that there's not hiccups. And if there is hiccups, making sure you have the correct solutions and resources so that we can resolve those in a timely manner.
Absolutely. Going back to the service area reductions for this year, we've got somewhere in the ballpark of 600,000 from UHC, a little over 500,000 from Humana, and as reporting 10% of their business, or about 400,000 plans. Knowing that most of those are going to impact rural markets with the reduction of the PPO service areas, we're going to see some clients and some agents go back to the Medicare supplement and Part D world. What do we know about the Part D market coming up this AEP, and what can agents expect?
Yeah, I mean that's a very interesting point. I would say I would start with it. It does seem like another doom and gloom, the sky's falling scenario. This is not true in all areas. It's not true with all carriers, but for a lot of these organizations that are doing this, even in the rural markets. Again, I'm not saying across everywhere. There is another option available. It may not be a PPO, but they do have another option available. It just may not be as benefit rich as what they were used to seeing in the past. Now there is a when you look at across all carriers, you're looking at about 10% of members will have no option. And in turn, yeah, now you're right back into, do I do a med sup? Do I do a Part D? What are my options? And that's even true with an MA. Even if you have another option available, if your plan is being terminated, well, that gives you guaranteed issue into a med sup. Maybe that's something you want to look at, where you don't have to worry about the networks. You don't have to worry about the cost sharing depending on the plan you're in, or the extent of cost sharing with Medicare Advantage plan. So a couple things I would say with that is if we look at the healthcare side of things first and leave Part D out of it for a second. If we look at the med sups, one thing we have to look at is there's been a lot of changes with med sups across the country on a state level. A lot of states are now moving into offering a birthday month rule where it's guaranteed issue into a med sup on your birthday, or some states go months before and months after, give you a little grace period there. The problem with that one, I shouldn't say the problem, but the thing to be aware of and concerned about is the stability of rates when it comes to med sups. We've already been seeing a pretty large increase as far as rate increases year over year. Again, this, and it's not 100% this reason, but again, this goes back to the COVID days. When a carrier on a med sup side of things wants to increase their premiums, they have to file it with the state insurance department. And if their claims, their medical loss ratios don't justify the increase, even though the carrier could say, we're going to see this in the next 2 years, it's not going to get approved. Okay. Um, so what we're saying is, again, now individuals are using and going back in for the services. Some treatments or some conditions got worse because they weren't servicing it, so forth through. Now we're seeing a lot of med sup carriers get into the double digit, and not just a 1 in front of that double digit. Some of them are a 2 in front of that double digit, and that gets pretty pricey. What I would say with that is, one, make sure you're looking at all the options. Make sure it's again, not saying the least expensive one isn't the correct option, but make sure you're looking at the carrier that you're choosing, the plan that you're looking at, to see what the history's been with that carrier. Make sure that they really can and are, I shouldn't say can, but really are planning for the future. It's not a 12-month play for that carrier. It's not an 18-month play. It's truly a 3 to 4 year play out that carrier is trying to do. And there are carriers out there that are looking at it in that form and facet. So one, I would say we're looking at higher med sup premiums, which is a financial strain for some individuals. But then also when we start looking at the Part D, the Part D has gotten interesting. It has gotten for the most part, statistically, from what the government is saying, less expensive for the consumer by putting the maximum that the consumer can spend on that. But in direct correlation to that, what happens is the federal government, years past, was providing a lot of the funding as far as offsetting those drug costs, along with manufacturer discounts. A lot of that, in fact, the majority of that cost now has been pushed over to the actual drug company themselves, that they're now taking on over 75% of the drug cost themselves. What that does is that turns into, how do we make sure that we can withstand a product again? I say we, I'm not an insurance company, but that's what their thought process is. Like, how do we make sure that we can continuously service these individuals and go forward? Well, last year we had the IRA go through, and you had a lot of carriers out there put in their bids each year, just like they do with Medicare Advantage. They have put in what they want to offer by region. Most regions are by state. And what happened is, when a good chunk of that financial expenditure got pushed over to the carriers then start switching around what the cost sharing is. They start putting deductibles on. They start increasing premiums. Well, when these bids started coming in, the government looked at it and said, "Oh my gosh, we can't believe how high these premiums just went."
How shocking, right?
Yeah, how shocking. You put a cost on, they have to somehow offset the cost. Again, it's not something that they can make 50% profit on these things. So when that happened, then what you had happen is you had the federal government come in right before the election last year and say, okay, we're going to do a stay, not a stay, but we're going to provide subsidies to help offset this. And now you can only increase your premiums by X dollar amount. Well, a lot of those subsidies not necessarily have gone away, but now it's not as great as it was. So we saw a transition last year with that. This year with that happening, bids again went in. The subsidies weren't clearly there on how much was going to be provided as far as a premium subsidy. Now it's a $50 increase year over year on premium is the maximum a carrier can do. Well, how these subsidies are actually generated or determined, I should say, it's determined by a region. So what happens if you have 10 carriers that come in and put a bid in to XYZ state? I'll take Florida. They put in a bid into Florida. And you have carrier X that comes in and says, we can offer these benefits and we're going to charge a $10 premium. And then we have carrier Y that says 25, 50, 25, 50, and so forth through. And then you have a carrier that comes and says, we have to do it, or we can do it, but we got to do a $100 premium. How it's determined on how much of a premium subsidy these carriers get back, it's the average on the bid submissions. So if you have a carrier that's I shouldn't say outlandish, but if you have a carrier that's extremely high, that's now creating a larger subsidy that all these carriers get, even the ones down to 10. It's not based off of the plan that you're offering. It's based off the average of the bids. So this was actually the first year I had ever seen in 20 years.
Yeah,
now.
first year I've ever seen it in the
Yeah, I
history
mean,
of Part Ds.
Yeah, so it's interesting. And there was a carrier, unfortunately, and you can do your research and figure out what carrier it is, but there was a carrier that put in a bid and the bid was denied by the federal government. Well, what happens from there is that carrier now gets a chance to essentially do a second bid or appeal, whatever you want to call it. And they put in their second bid. Now they don't get any kind of notes on how far off they were or why it was denied or anything like that. Well, the second time now going in, it was denied again. So now what happens is now that carrier cannot offer a product in that state. And that's one concerning for a couple of reasons. One, it's concerning by not having enough, in my opinion, enough options or maybe just allowing the options for a consumer to choose which product they want to go into, right? But two, there's also the ruling out there that if I'm a carrier that chooses not to renew or offer a plan in a state after I've had one there, I have to sit out 2 years before I can reintroduce a plan to that area. Well, there's no clear indication on if your bid's denied, if that leaves you out of there for 2 years. Can you come back in the following year? So that's a gray area. And as individuals, I'm sure everybody who may be listening to this is well aware in this industry, there's a lot of gray area that isn't truly defined. And it comes down to carrier specific determination. It comes down to the CMS regional centers. So, region 1 may determine statute one way, where CMS region 2 may determine it a completely different way. And it's a matter of what region does that carrier report to. So, it's helping out individuals that had higher cost share when it comes to, or higher financial expenditure for the drugs by having that maximum put on as far as true, and it's not even really true, but it's the drug cost, what the consumer's paying plus what the difference the cost is. So that's helping out. That's a positive. It's helping out the individuals that utilize it quite a bit, but also what this is now causing, which does affect and hurt the individuals that may be on just generics, may not have any medications they're taking, and they're just taking a prescription drug plan, so they're not getting hit with a penalty, is it causes those individuals now to have a more financial risk or expenditure on a yearly basis when they're not actually doing it. So it helps one population group out, it hurts another population group. So it's an unfortunate situation we're in, and uh, I hate to say it this way, but a lot of times the government goes through the situation where they learn as they go along, and sometimes they make these outlandish changes and realize that was wrong, and they have to step backwards. Sometimes it is good, and they just have to modify it and evolve it as we move forward. But I think this year will be another good year of data that they can review, and hopefully by 2030, when a lot of this really does fully go into effect, that they get it right by then.
This reminds me of that couple year period back in the 80s when they put a cap on Part B, and that lasted all of 18 months before they realized they made a mistake and changed the law.
Yes,
Something as
very
silly as
true.
that. It is a learning experience for sure. So we talked about the impact from SARS. We talked about a shift in plan designs, getting people onto the special needs plans where appropriate, offering benefits to those folks. We talked about the Part D market. There's a lot of things that are happening this year. But both you and I know anytime there's huge changes or big changes in the Medicare industry, it gives
There's
us a
opportunity.
huge opportunity for growth. Absolutely. So looking forward to this year's AEP, we got a little over a about a month and a half to go before October 15 kicks off. What should agents be doing now to get ready and put themselves in a position to grab hold of that opportunity this AEP?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot as these years usually play in, but a couple things I would say right off the bat with that is, I think the first most obvious thing is start reviewing the carriers you may be contracted with, but more importantly, also review carriers you're not appointed with. That's number one. Making sure you have the correct carriers that you're aligned with. I would also be making sure, even if maybe you're only working with one carrier, maybe you're working only with the national carriers, but I would take the time right now to make sure that you're getting truly appointed with as many carriers as you can in your area that you're servicing members in. A couple reasons for that. One, yes, we can look at the benefits right now and say, yeah, this is going to be the hot ticket item, or these are going to be the two hot ticket items in this area. One thing that I hesitate with that on is, could be the hot ticket item. How long can they withstand it? Can they withstand it all AEP? Or is it going to be 3 weeks and they see this huge influx of business and all of a sudden the carrier gets scared because they don't want, I mean, let's call it whatever carrier you want. You can take the big behemoth across the country, United Healthcare, Humana, Aetna, Elevences, you can take the regional players. None of these carriers want 100% of the business. That's not realistic. They can't withstand it. They want their fair share. They want everybody else to get their fair share. And that's what they're looking for. So if a carrier goes in and their strategic plan is this AEP, I want to capture 12% of the market share, and within 2 weeks of AEP, they've already captured 10%, guess what? They're going to shut that plan down, whether it's not commissionable or whether it's suppressed. The key with it is making sure that you have another solution, another option, to be able to help consumers and help yourself out with. So that'd be number one, making sure you're doing your research, making sure that you know what plans are available and know where those nuances is as far as where are their wins and where are their losses. Where does the plan really want to go? And we all have that part to play to help a carrier out. And that's making sure we're putting quality of business with the carriers, making sure consumers understand it, making sure the consumers know how to utilize their benefits and actually get involved in their healthcare. Unfortunately, I kind of look at it, healthcare is one of those few things that people get it, set it, and kind of forget it until they have to use it. It's something that we should be involved in our healthcare. We should be actively trying to make our lives healthier, live longer, and so forth. Number two, I would say is, if you're working with JSA or if you're working with a competitor, make sure you're reaching out to who you're working through. Reach out to JSA's sales team. We have every region has a sales team. If you don't know who they are, call into our toll-free number. Take some time and ask the questions, develop and formulate a business plan on how you're going to go out and not only service your existing membership, but how are you going to grow? How are you going to go find new prospects out there? And there's a lot of different ways to do that. This isn't a one-trick pony type of scenario. What works for me isn't going to work for Chris. What works for Chris may not work for one of you listening to the call. So we have to make sure that we can help formulate a game plan around what you're comfortable with doing and what your expertise is. So making sure you're having that direct line of communication. Also, when you're talking to the sales team, make sure you know what resources are available. There's a lot of new resources that are out there, whether it's Retire Flow, whether it's Blaze Sync, whether it's the CRM that JSA is offering, Core. There's tools out there that can help take a lot of what I'll call the busy work off of the table for you. That's allowing the comparison of drugs. That's going to be a huge game changer for consumers this year. We talked briefly about the Part D, the standalone Part D, but that whole concept with Part D falls over to MAPD too. So it's not just on one side or the other. We have to really review that, and that's truly, in my eyes, what's going to be the largest game changer as far as which way or what company a consumer chooses to go with.
I agree. And I think one of the big surprises that we'll see with the Medicare Advantage market as we get to October 1st, which is the first day we're going to be able to run those quotes for our clients, is not only are plans setting themselves up for either success or stagnation or even reduction with their benefits, but the changes to the formulary, that could be a big surprise and further proof on why you need to add as many carriers now to make sure you don't get any of those formulary surprises come October 1st.
Yeah, and it's not, and in today's age with the technology we have, and there's AI out there, and I love how everybody uses the word AI. Well, how are you actually going to use it? But there's plenty of tools out there that like I said will do a lot of that work on your behalf. Whether it's communication to your consumers, so that you don't have to worry about consistently reaching out to those consumers. We have automations built into our CRM. Whether it's doing just comparison on the drug aspect of things, utilize those tools, because in the world we're in today, and even last year, and for those of you who were in AEP last year, you're well aware of this. There's not enough time during AEP to sit there and have a 45-minute conversation with every single one of your members just to go through drugs. And that's just literally doing data entry, making sure we're typing in the medications right, and doing that comparison on which way somebody should go. Like I said, there's tools out there. Retire Flow, Blaze Sync, Retire Flows through Connector, Blaze Syncs through Sunfire. Utilize those, because it's something where you can send those links out to your consumers. Those consumers then can type in their information, their medications. It's coming back into your own personal platform and is running those comparisons right away on your behalf. There's also some resources out there that will, if you've utilized one of the electronic platforms, where it will review. Now, this is only based off of the drugs that were entered in there from the profile last year, but it'll take a look at what was entered in and say, hey, here's a list of your members that are high priority targets for you, that based off of the medications they had last year, based off of what these carriers are doing for this upcoming year, you need to touch base with them, because these are individuals that need to change. Their drugs are no longer on this plan, or they lost 2 of their drugs, or whatever the case may be. But it'll actually prioritize that out for you, so that you're able to truly formulate the game plan. If you don't have a game plan, it's going to be a horrible AEP. If you have a game plan, Chris mentioned it earlier, when this industry changes something, when the government changes something, when there's disruption in this industry, it creates the largest opportunity. In fact, usually it's one of the most successful AEPs agents will ever have, because you're going out and you're having to deal with all these consumers, and you're having to connect with them, and you get the referrals. Or if you're doing the meetings, you're having more people come in because they don't know which way to go. You have individuals that may be trying to do their shopping themselves online, and it's to the point where it's just too confusing and they can't do it anymore. So it's make sure the game plan you're formulating is one, actionable. Can you actually even do it? If you have a client base of 500, if you have a client base of 5,000, if you're going to think you're just going to sit there and try data entering every one of those and review every single one of them, it's not realistic in today's age, and you shouldn't be doing that. You should be using technology. You should be using the AI that's out there to determine, how do I touch base with these individuals? How do I do the comparisons? Those are truly at risk of having their healthcare truly affected, and so forth through. The other thing I would say is, we can't be naive to the fact that plans go non-commissionable, plans do suppression. We've seen first looks so far as a lot of these carriers, what they're doing. I would put out there that just because we saw first looks, not every one of those plans is going to be commissionable this AEP. I think by the time October 1st comes, before then, I think it will happen in September, this month sometime, I believe that there will be another list. So we're having our SARS list. We know where carriers are removing their product. I believe we're going to have a list of, hey, guess what? These plans are no longer commissionable. And they just don't want the business on that side of things, because it's a losing battle for them. So it's something where you have to make sure that, yes, you're protecting your consumers, but you're also protecting your own livelihood. If this is the only industry you're in is the healthcare marketplace, you have to make sure that your revenue's protected, your business, your family, your beneficiaries are protected. And one way to do that, an easy way to do that, is making sure that you're working with other products. It's not just one-stop shop of Medicare Advantage, MedSup, Part D, done. That shouldn't be the case. There's still a lot of gaps and holes in healthcare when you really look at it. And it's something where you need to be offering and looking at these ancillary products. You have to be looking at hospital indemnity. And look at products for AEP during this time frame. Look at products that you can actually market and sell at the same appointment. Hospital indemnity, cancer, dental vision, long-term care technically falls underneath that. But you find these, and it's not, you could look and say, oh, well, it's just trying to increase your revenue. Yeah, it increases your revenue. But what it's also doing is it's protecting that consumer for the worst case scenario financial situation.
Especially looking at some of the first looks with the hospital, the inpatient hospital
Yeah,
co-pays for the upcoming year,
absolutely.
people are in for a lot of shock there.
Absolutely. And realistically, hospital indemnity plans out there, well, first off, most of these carriers or most of the national carriers have gone the route of having a certain time for age window where it's guaranteed issue. There's no health questions to even begin with. You can get a hospital indemnity plan that's going to cover the major copayment or coinsurance of a Medicare Advantage, or for that matter, of a Medicare supplement if you're doing one of the
Like one of the high deductible plans.
high deductible plan or Plan N or Plan M or even K or L for that matter, do a percentage plan. You can get a hospital indemnity plan that designs that and covers the bulk of it, not all of it, but it'll cover the bulk of it for anywhere from, it'll be a crazy range because we're talking nationally here, but anywhere from $35 to $65 a month. For $30 to $65 a month, it's not a lot of money to make sure that you have a financial protection and you have a backup, that if something happens, the consumer's having again that financial protection. You look at cancer. I mean, cancer, that one's near and dear to my heart. You look at males, 1 out of 2, 1 out of 3. I'm not preaching into the choir here. And you look at that 60% of costs when it comes to cancer treatment is not health related. It's non-direct. It's all the other stuff that no one thinks about. It's who's going to pay if you're the breadwinner, if you're still working, or if it's you're on Social Security or you're on your pension or what have you. If you're going through cancer treatment, the last thing you want to deal with is how am I going to pay somebody to come take care of my yard, someone to come take care of the house, the pets. If I'm traveling to find the best place that I can go get cancer treatment, who's paying for my travel costs? That's
Yeah,
a
one of the things that they don't talk about in the Cancer Society is, yes, the life expectancy for most cancers has dramatically improved over the past couple of years, but you have to understand that each of those years that you're adding onto life expectancy or even going into remission, you're substantially increasing the cost throughout that entire time because it's going
absolutely.
to cost money to get to that point, especially with all
Yeah.
these new specialty treatments. It can get crazy fast.
Yep. And if you have to travel, especially talking about rural areas, a lot of people will say, well, if you have a med sup, you don't need a hospital indemnity or you don't need a cancer plan. That's crazy because if you're in a rural area, you're traveling somewhere. Hotel cost. You got hotel costs, you got airfare. If you have a significant other, you're probably going to want them there for emotional support. There's so many different things there, and I think the unfortunate thing about our industry is we've gotten to the point where I'll use the word some individuals are scared to bring up that other option as far as a product solution, and they're scared because they don't want to lose the first sale, and the first sale is the Medicare Advantage, MedSup, Part D, what have you. But it's something where when offered, and if offered correctly, and if you're truly designing it the right way, most people will see the value in it. That's also creating a better retention rate for you. It's creating a better revenue stream for you. So, that would be another thing that I would be looking at to prepare for this AEP. This past AEP, I think a lot of people were in shock and kind of taken back with when one carrier went suppressed or non-commissionable. All of a sudden, there was another one, and then another one. And by the time AEP was done, you were left with maybe one or two that were still commissionable, and you could at least make a living off of. So it's something where I think we need to look at what happened this past AEP. We need to prepare and make sure that there's a way that you're being able to financially support yourself.
All right. And I think for our last question for our first podcast, when we sit at the end of AEP come December 8th, where do you think the market's going to be? Where do you think we're going to look like as far as experience this AEP? What are your expectations as we finish out another difficult annual enrollment period?
I think there's going to be, that's an interesting question. And didn't really think that one through. I would say one with kind of I would hope history repeats itself. I would hope that throughout this year, I believe and I hope that our team here internally at JSA has done a lot of our due diligence and created those resources and tools to make sure that, you know, if and it's kind of more of like when this happens because we're already seeing it that we're able to help set agents up for success. So I would look at this as going to be one of and again, I've been with JSA now for 24 years. This is my 20th AEP. I truly believe this is going to be one of our best record breaking AEPs when it comes to sales, when it comes to retention. I believe that this AEP, I see ancillary, again, the hospital indemnity, cancer, critical illness, all that kind of fun stuff. I see that most likely doubling But what we've done year over year, and that's being conservative, I would probably push that more to almost a 2.5 to 3 times what we've done, just because of everything that's happened and the need for it out there. I would look at this saying, for any reason on why to diversify, and I'm not saying get out of Medicare. Medicare is amazing, and we do extremely good work as far as making sure consumers know and are protected and are in what we feel is one of the better plans for them. But I would say this past year really showed how we do have to diversify, that if something were to happen with all the carriers or some of the carriers, that you're financially stable, and how you diversify during AEP, because let's face it, you could say I want to do all this extra stuff, but there's not an extra hour in every day, right? There's only so many hours that you can work in a day, and there's only so many hours that a consumer is going to meet with you. But make the most out of every appointment. And I would put a challenge out. If you bring up and pick one, pick hospital indemnity, pick cancer, pick critical illness, pick one of those products, and if you bring it up at each one of your appointments throughout this AEP, I would put a challenge out there that I'd be shocked if you're not selling 5 out of 10, so 50% of an extra product, just by offering, just by saying it. And I've kind of looked at this in the past with these carriers, and I've talked to carriers about this. In fact, I was just with a lot of the national carriers here over the past month and a half, 2 months. A lot of carriers, and you saw more and more national carriers releasing their hospital indemnity plans or tweaking them and making a bigger focus on it. Where I believe we've had the benefit and where we've gotten spoiled in this industry is when it comes to AEP, or even throughout the year, what kind of commercials, advertisements to consumers do you see out there? It's all Medicare Advantage. It's Part D. Very rarely have I seen a Med Sup commercial lately. It's really all been diving into Medicare Advantage, especially during AEP. So we've been kind of spoiled with that's been advertised out there, that people are asking us for that, or they see that value right away. Hospital indemnity, these ancillary products. One of the points I made to these carriers, these national carriers, because they're like, how do we get more? How do we do more? But what's your marketing game plan? Everybody wants to market and talk about the Medicare Advantage, which I understand completely. Like, this is the time of the year, we only have so many days to do it. But the easiest way to get into that is they need to get the consumers to ask you about it, ask you, the agent, for it. But until these carriers decide to do that, or maybe you want to try doing a commercial out there in your local area. But the other way to get around it is you just need to bring it up. And I think, I would challenge everybody to bring it up on the first 10 appointments. If you don't get 5 sales out of it, stop doing it. Or if you don't get 2 sales out of it, stop doing it. But I truly believe that will be a game changer. I think that is something that's going to help out drastically. That's going to help solidify your relationship with that consumer. It's going to show the value that you bring, that you're looking out for them more than just one aspect. You're looking out for them financially.
Huge retention
And,
booster.
and at that point, now it gives you another opportunity, another reason to go back, in SEP, and start talking about life or annuities or final expense. Really make sure that you're being that expert, because if you're not, somebody else is gonna. And you've heard this from everybody over the years that you've been in the industry, whether it's 6 months or whether it's 20 years. If you're not asking your consumer if you can help them with something, or if you're not bringing up what you're working with, the consumer's going to go find someone else that's willing to, or somebody else is going to ask them, and they're going to move everything over to that individual. So I would say, make sure you're taking advantage of every opportunity you have. The opportunities you have for this AEP are all the individual appointments that you're meeting with your consumers, and make sure that you remember that you can bring up these other product lines, and make sure, again, you're financially protecting your consumer. So that would be my final thoughts, I guess.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Adam. We appreciate you spending some time here. Good conversations. And yeah, this AEP is going to be a wild one, but it's going to be a huge opportunity for a lot of agents. And we encourage them to utilize the resources we have. All of our agents have access to My Health Plan and Sunfire, the BladeSync platform. We have all the different marketing materials and things to help agents get through this, and make sure that they're also not just focusing on retention, but taking advantage of some of these growth opportunities this
Yeah,
AEP.
and I'd also, I guess one last thing is don't wait. Start developing your big game plan. Like, now is the time to do it. Don't be hesitant or shy. Call JSA. Let us help walk you through that. Or even if you already have your game plan, give us a call. Walk us through your game plan. Maybe we can give you some tidbits on how to maybe tweak it. Maybe something you could possibly remove, or maybe it's just perfect as it is. But there's no harm in having a second set of eyes late on that and see what we can do to work together, to partner together, to make sure that this is going to be the best and most successful AEP you've ever had.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Adam. Really appreciate it. And here's to another crazy AEP together.
Yep. Well, cheers, everybody. Thank you. Hope everybody has a great day and hope you found this beneficial.
Yes, take care.